Ken, I've been saving your seat for you.
Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson.
Get the nice
Okay.
Gotta be more.
First of all,
They
could
call
you
it-
introduce yourselves and give us all your phone numbers? That's right, so that we can call you.
My name is Ken Kossack.
He works for Dick.
If there's any questions, please call me. What was your number again?
Yeah, let's go right down the line. Who you are, and what your area of responsibility is, and what your home phone number is. Birthday, your birthday card.
Steve Borcich. This is not on. It is on. Steve Borcich, responsible for part of the PAE effort, and January 24th is the birthday.
What's up?
Chuck Marsden, Manager of Technical Product Management for CSD, and I'm responsible for hardware network support.
I'm Todd Kinsella. I'm part of development in DLE in England.
I'm Todd Kurland. I'm marketing here in Weebo.
I'm Roger Mortimer. I'm a development manager in Westboro.
If you want my phone number, then I'm Edson DeCastro. If you don't, I'm Forrest McNamara, IBM Comms.
Ken Kossack, Development Manager of CommServer. Okay, I think what we wanted to do was to be able to basically answer your questions and also get a chance to go and ask as many questions as we can of you. You've had a week of rather intensive training as far as I know, and I'm sure you have some questions based on everything, and why don't we go ahead and start off. John, was there any other activity that you wanted to be able to accomplish?
Jeff has a whole series of questions.
Okay.
Who's Jeff?
What do we do with this?
All right. We've got a good list coming for you here. I'll let Bruce start out.
Some of these probably be redundant. There may be a lot of things the other people, I think everybody wrote down the questions they had as they went along.
We didn't get those in advance. Is there any?
Some of we're with the Customer Support Center, by the way, myself and Jeff, and we obviously our major point of concern is remote support and supporting the customer over the phone. One of the things we would like to see is, or we're concerned about, is all the queues and databases within CommServer. With other products, with other email products, we've had problems in the past where files get corrupted, be it a disk failure or for whatever reason, just bad data.
Case sensitivity.
You know, the product falls down, and it's always a support hassle to find out which piece is causing the problem, which piece of a queue file or whatever. What we were interested in was some sort of tool to analyze these queues, find the bad piece, extract it, get rid of it, whatever. The only thing I can come up with as an example is like the correlation files that used to exist in DXA, still do in PXA. A common thing we do is delete those or rename them when we're having PXA or DXA problems to get rid of the ugly stuff so it'll stay up and run. Obviously that could cause some problems, lost mail or whatever. We just had a concern in that area that the product's going to be data sensitive.
So like with MailI or the SMTP and the MailI interface and the CEO, there's a utility that exists now to print the actual contents of where the things are in the queue. So you can typically see what the last guy he's trying to process is, and you can go ahead and figure out what his number is in reference and get rid of it and bring MailI back up and run, which is something we're looking for here.
We are quite concerned about this as well, and I know that we've been working on a software debugging guide and putting in enhancements as far as different debugging tools and tracking capabilities. Who would like to get into some details on some of those, or just some of the generals? Roger, Pad, do you have some information on that?
It was quite a long question, so I won't bother repeating all of it. Most of your concern seems to be based around getting things out of queues, deleting things that get stuck in queues.
Bottom line, get the customer up and running.
Yeah. There will be a mechanism for seeing what is on queues and being able to delete individual items for them. We're talking about message queues. That will be there, and you will be able to do that from the management workstation.
Okay. There, going to our next question.
There is.
Would it be a database utility to go in and look at the database, like the VSCP database now? If that gets corrupted, to go in there and do all that kind of repair? Or
I'd have to pass the microphone back to Roger to answer that one, so just let me carry on with the queues. There is also a concept of a dead letter queue in CommServer. If a message just can't go any further, it can't go backwards, it can't go forwards, it gets placed in that queue. And there is a tool which allows you to display the contents of that queue. You could then decide whether or not to go back to the workstation and delete items on that queue. In terms of storage of or backups of databases, a lot of the information within CommServer is pretty transient, and you wouldn't want to back it up anyway. Something, say, the directory service database that would be of great value, take a lot of time to set up and you want to keep. There are mechanisms for safe storing that, for doing backups. And it doesn't change very often. So in the extreme, you could just delete the version that you've got on the system and replace it with some earlier version. The VSCP database, I don't know if there are mechanisms for that. Are there, Roger? There are ways of purging events from the management system.
I think this is going to lead into your next question, but our primary management interface is through the management workstation, and there you can get your hands on quite a few pieces of data, especially around the queues, being able to remove items, and we've put all our focus in terms of our sort of user interface into the management workstation. We haven't, however, got too much which is accessible through a terminal. And I know you have a lot of interest in getting to the system remotely. What we do have, though, is a lot of development tools. In developing this system, we've produced quite a few tools that allow us to do things, see things, meddle with things. Those, however, aren't product quality. They've been development tools. The activity that we're going through now in looking at the troubleshooting is saying, what are these other tools here we can apply? We have tools that allow us to clean up the item stores. In terms of management, there's a tool for able to clean up events. There's an event janitor. And what we're currently doing is looking at all the tools we have and saying, what is usable. Unfortunately, these haven't been designed with the end user in mind. They've evolved. And we've done this to a certain extent in a backward fashion. But there are some tools that you're going to find useful, but unfortunately, our primary interface is through the management workstation.
Yeah, that's obviously we can't run a bitmap display over 2400 block line. We were discussing that, and we had it all week. Either some sort of interface to the 386 through dial-in or to the MV.
If we could have a 386 support center that we could run the version of the management workstation on, you don't have to send through an async line into the MV, where you don't have to send all the graphic stuff down there, but you can actually run the interface and request all the commands and make the changes or whatever you need to do. That would be great for us in the support center.
Unfortunately, we've been looking at that. There are no graphics going between the MV and the workstation. All the graphics are generated there. It's just pure data, but we're still moving quite a lot of data between the workstation and then the MV, which, from our investigations, say that it's not going to be feasible to do that through a low-speed dial-up. So we are looking at the terminal capabilities for you for remote interfaces.
Staying with the workstation, it might have come up earlier in the week, but we talked about the management workstation being a possible single point of failure, and that's the only way to bring the CommServer up and down.
Right.
Is there an ability to do multiple management stations?
Yeah,
That's what we're getting at.
Yeah, you can run as many management workstations as you want off the system.
Okay, well, for us from the center, again, that's going to be an issue. If the problem resides with the PC, we have no way to troubleshoot.
What we'd be interested in, if there, excuse me,
Go ahead.
yeah, if there was a failure and there was only one management workstation, is to be able to manipulate the thing without it.
Right.
To a certain extent. Obviously, you can bring it up without it. I assume that will still be there when the final release comes out. You won't have to. Is
Bring
that
it up.
correct?
You won't have to bring it up from the PC. You can bring it up from the MV.
When you say bring up, you mean bring up all the different products?
CommServer,
Yeah, you can do those things without the management workstation. It might not be as clean as it is in the management workstation. We still have to work through some of those scenarios. We currently have all the MV-based procedures in place. In terms of being able to diagnose the management workstation, there is a certain amount you can do from the MV, but that is true that there's no way of telling if you have any Unix problems or X window problems on that workstation.
See, that leads us into a hole, Mr. Marsden.
What role is that, Jeff?
Well, you can't support the workstation remotely. So the customer calls up and says, well, I'm on my workstation, like Bruce's example, I'm on my workstation, I've gone into this directory, I've clicked on it twice, and it didn't do anything. What's wrong?
There's no,
Yeah.
it's impossible to say.
Really, it is, unless we had that interface from the support center with a 386 dial-in and said, well, it works for us, you must have something wrong.
I think this is an area that we can put some effort into. You can, in fact, from the MV, look at files on the workstation via FTP, via Telnet. So you can, in fact, get into the workstation and poke around its file system. So there is some level of diagnostics you can do, and part of this whole troubleshooting guide is those are the things we're looking at. But again, unfortunately, being graphics-based, when they say something on the screen and it's not doing the right things, there's not too much you can do unless you can do the same thing that the user's trying to do.
Yeah.
Can I just bring up a question there? Is there any way, even if you had a workstation remote, even if you had a remote workstation and you dialed in over a 9600 baud line running SLIP or something like that, okay, to connect into the network, is there a way to just jump onto the network and be able to do things like that, to manage it, to do things, or is the network management station integrated in such a way that that isn't a feasible alternative? Because there are ways to do that. There are ways to get onto the LAN remotely, whatever the expense, via some kind of gateway bridge or whatever. If that were done, is there a way to do something?
Yeah, there are various ways. Our concern is that if the thing is oriented towards a 10 megabit LAN.
Right, you're talking about you're transferring a lot of data back and forth.
And
That seems to be the bottleneck right there.
Yeah, you probably can put procedures in place where you can hang off the workstation remotely, but whether you're going to have it where it's usable, we don't think so.
Can that be raised as an issue
Yeah,
to you all to address?
we've known this as we're going through and doing the troubleshooting guide and all that. I think what we want to do is make sure that we record all these, and especially if they're new areas, but we'll go and assure you that this is a concern that we're trying to take a look at. There's no solution that we have in the first release, we'll continue to work on it as one of our issues.
As far as to Chuck, this needs to be raised to the FE marketing when they put together the pricing proposal for support.
The issue has been raised, I know Tom Anderson is discussed about remote support.
Yeah, we've been working with Tom and
Working on issues.
Yeah.
About some possibilities of coming in through the MV in the future. And that's where it stands right now.
Okay.
The issue has been raised.
Okay.
Let me do this with regards to these questions that are coming up. Let me make notes so that we'll have a record. Okay, so then on a regular basis, we can keep you informed of what we're doing.
Okay. What are we up to? That one.
Unless you've already got a list, and then I won't recreate it.
Oh, come on, marketing has to do something.
Well, keep marketing busy.
One of the other, this goes into one of the other things, I know that we would like in the support center, I didn't say this, Chuck, to be an alpha beta test for this product. However, it raises an issue that can marketing, FE, or whoever it may be, provide us with the tools, hardware that we need to do this. That's a big issue for us. You know, to run the management workstation, we're going to need a dedicated 386. To run the telex, we're going to need a telex and the fax machines, on and on. Can that be raised as an issue for you all to maybe go back and talk with Mr. Scoggins about? I guess I'd direct that to Chuck.
Well,
And Chuck's going to direct it back to me.
no, I'm not going to direct it back to you. I think that I'm not sure I know what the beta plan is right now, but certainly we can discuss the possibility of CSC being a beta site and look into the equipment aspects and what's available.
Well, we're going to, again, like with all of these products, the time frame for this to come out is April or so. And if we're not going to see this from December to April, we're going to be very, very rusty when you guys install this at the Federal Reserve, you know, or whoever, and we start taking calls. We're just going to go blank. So we're going to need this CommServer product in the center for a long time.
Okay, what about the possibility of engineers from the center being up here working with development between now and April, off and on? And
That's
those-
going to be a good
that's an
possibility too.
alternative, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, we'd like to encourage anybody that does have the time and desire to come and work with development in our integration and testing activities. And
We'd be glad to be involved.
Sites that are around the country that we're still mining, and please identify yourself and we'll find you work.
We'd be glad to be involved.
I
It's a
think-
question of whether the center will let us.
I think this is something that you're going to have to relate back to
Right.
to Elvis, who
Yeah.
will follow up with Brian on the need for the more software expertise and training.
The next thing we had was the use of, on the Xenix workstation, why isn't it, or is it not incorporated into sysadmin for installing one of the packages, install package? Everybody familiar with the Xenix?
Well, under 386, yeah, there's a sysadmin where you install packages. We haven't done that yet, where there is no problems, no feasibility problems in just adding it into the sysadmin. That's just a more organizational thing, and that's one of the things that we're looking at in cleaning up the product and making it better to use is
Okay.
adding that sysadmin install capability.
Along those lines, we have been thinking about having a separate package or a pre-configured package for the certain components like the management workstation or the fax PC with a certain number of boards, and actually have a model number that you potentially can order. Todd and I have been discussing this briefly as far as that potential. Obviously, it may or may not be used, but is this something that you see highly desirable, or is this?
Well, if most things are done via sysadmin, the customers are used to it. So
Okay.
it's more of, they're used to it, I guess.
Ken, addressing that, if you were looking at a package with things that are pre-installed, are you even considering installing things like 386IX, TCP/IP?
Yeah, it would be a completely installed package that you ship already up and working.
The
class didn't see the installation of those base pieces of software.
Oh, you let them off the hook. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've done it before.
Okay.
We have.
Great.
Okay. This goes into the known good host kind of thing, like for SNA. If we don't get, if there's no way to get some of the telnet or the fax requirements down in the center, will there be made available a host somewhere that we can test from? You know, where we can send a message via the telnet or the fax or whatever. You know, that's just a secondary thing if we don't get this done.
Well, should we turn this over to Jerry? I think that might be a support question.
Use IMGO 25? What a nice guy.
Oh, there we are. We have an answer. Lock him into that.
Write it down. Management errors. We had a problem with the fax machine, fax implementation 2 days ago, where we were getting an error coming back from the MV that was the lower half 16 bits of an error message. And it took a little while to figure it out, but we finally figured out what it was. But that's a problem. You know, is there a way to pass back all 32 bits, or is there a way to pass back the actual data, which we would rather see rather than the error code, and then have to go back to the MV and type message on the error code?
Yeah, it would be a great help for the management workstation if you would actually pass back a meaningful error message instead of just a
I
message.
assume this was submitted as a bug.
No, it can be.
Yeah, I think we already have a bug report on that one.
But can it instead of passing the error message back,
Yeah,
pass the
with-
data
with-
string?
This was strictly fax, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, I think I'm not fully sure the details here, but we are still in the process of improving, especially the fault and events. One of the issues here is just getting together the databases that have all the error messages in.
Right.
And I believe it's just one step of getting some further databases in. And
And
we're addressing those issues.
An addendum to that, is there a way to tell who created the error? So like with this error message with fax, we got an error number back, but we didn't know it was coming from the MV or the PC.
Okay. If the fault coming through has the information of who it's from, then it should be displayed there.
Okay.
In this case, it could be that it wasn't. It didn't have the right information in the event coming through.
Okay. We already addressed the tool for looking at the DSA database. Yeah.
I had a question on, probably for Forrest. Is the SNADS AU being tested with anything besides DISOS? The reason I asked that is DXA has had problems in the past with soft switch specifically.
Right.
Or is it strictly going to be a DISOS?
And are we going to state that?
Well, both directly and indirectly. We will test it to DISOS in our shop, and indirectly through DISOS to System 36. We probably ought to also talk to a 5520, but we don't have one on site. DXA, the last release, Gary went to a customer site to test it there. Yeah, we do have a 36, and we also have a PSPC in our shop. So they will be tested, and I believe they're part of the test plan.
Will you be testing it with soft switch?
On a mainframe?
On a mainframe? Because we have two very large customers that are running soft switch.
Well, more than two, but...
Exxon and Northern. Burlington Northern.
But that...
That are potentials probably for this.
Westinghouse also runs soft switch.
I can't really answer that without looking into it, because soft switch's implementation of SNADS is different from, it's not a vanilla SNADS.
It's substituted.
You don't really talk to SNADS when you talk to soft switch. You're talking to a piece of software that they have put on the host.
Right.
And our SNADS is a vanilla. I'd have to look into that. I don't know the answer to
Thing
that
is,
at the top.
they believe that they're equivalent in nature, or that the soft switch is full encompassing.
I think they are a lot. They do a lot.
Well, there may be as much as a 98% overlap, but I'm not too sure. I know at one time Sharon Garvey was working with them, and I don't remember the results of that.
Well, Gary's worked with them extensively, and they definitely do some things differently than DISOS, and that's the reason it's a concern.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll definitely look into that.
and that's one of the more popular, packages.
Yeah, I can confirm that, although we may not have access to a sausage implementation until we get to these customer sites.
Right.
But I think it will be an important part of the product to be able to work with these companies that are our competitors or allies, or however you want to go and put them. Competitors, probably.
I guess one that didn't make the list is the debugging features, the verbosity level output in some of these log files and output files is extensive, and it's really, really appreciated. The question, though, is will you all put together some sort of guide as to what all these mean? Marcia and I spent a long time last night looking at some of these things and came down to, well, that looks pretty good. That's bad, we think. That would be great for us to have again on the support center when we're debugging some of this stuff. That doesn't exist now, I
Yeah,
guess.
and
I know you
we're
really
going to
need
continue
know.
to improve it and enhance it, and I think a lot of the information is there. Now we have to go and make sure that the meaning and the knowledge is there, it's how to use it, and so we'll continue to
But
enhance
the
that.
debugging features are great, and all the stuff you're putting in there is very helpful.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I don't think we can promise much documentation in detail of those policies. The focus that we've got at the moment, the troubleshooting guides on how to isolate problems from the workstation, how to work out which piece of software is not working or which piece of hardware is not working. I think that the traces that you're referring to there are those produced by the individual software components, which go down into great detail.
Right. That's what we need.
We would like to have time to document all of those in a very user-friendly way, but we really have to tackle the troubleshooting guide isolation level before we do that.
Well, I guess.
I realize where all that comes from. It's very good information. It might not be necessary to have a detailed
Full-blown user-friendly implementation of that stuff.
a detailed description of every message it prints out. But I guess what you do is you print out, when you enter a module or do something within a module, you print out, put that in there and say this did that. What might be handy is like a block diagram of the major pieces of each AU and what they do. So when we see an entry for that AU in the log file, we can have an idea of
where it is,
when it failed or whatever.
Yeah.
Or when it was successful.
Yeah.
But we realize that's
It's a
low
low
priority.
It's difficult to pick the level there. What would probably help is if we could work with Jerry and Marcia to work out what level they think we should go to. It has to correspond well with what's done in the classes for the product. We don't want to force the users of the system to understand the entire inner workings.
Well, this would be for us.
This is strictly a support.
Support only.
Well, in the field.
In the field, sure. But it's a
Okay.
DG, not a customer.
Maybe not that expensive.
I want to propose something to everyone. There are certainly diagnostics customers use on a day-to-day basis. But for an installation, I know we've found the tracing facility is very useful to know what parameters we've set incorrectly. And I think a need for that may continue, but by definition, if you're doing an installation, the SE is on site and has access to these files.
Yeah, I agree with all that, Jerry, but to some extent these log files have been very useful and important because we have not had an adequate top-down troubleshooting guide and a fully implemented functionality at the workstation. The need for these things should lessen as we finish those troubleshooting guides and as you end up with workstations with full functionality and text instead of error codes and stuff like that. That is the way it should end up. You should only exceptionally have to dig down and look at the error traces and switch on the developer level debugging aids. You shouldn't have to do that. You do that perhaps when you want to submit an SPR and submit some additional information with it, but you shouldn't have to do that during installation. You shouldn't have to do that to track down and isolate problems in the first place. And we hope that you won't.
You shouldn't have to,
Yeah.
we end up doing it.
Okay.
That I mean, they do it in the field, and I know then we're their next level of support, and we've got to be able to help them, and just to say, well, they've done that, we can't do anything for you.
Okay. I just want you to know which
Yeah.
we're doing first and how we'd like it to end up.
A thing to addendum to this is that some of the AUs are using an out file for this tracing information, and some of them are using a log file for this tracing information. Can we make that sort of standard?
Sounds like a pretty good idea.
Todd, write that
Todd?
down.
I don't know if I understood that, log or out file.
One of the things Jerry just sort of brought up indirectly is the need for a verification utility to verify, I guess I'll precedent it first. Right now, the way we're installing things, in some of the SYN files, you're entering the same data over and over and over again. Yet, there's no utility to verify that you've entered the same data correctly in each entry. We need a verification tool.
Configuration verifier.
You know, to go out there and say, well, you entered PRMD, ARMD, and all this stuff here, but then 5 lines down, you blew it. Or it's different, or somewhere else. You know?
I'm not sure which revisions of the software you've been using, but that has been simplifying over time. The number of things that you have to put into the SYN files has been reducing. The number of things that are automatically worked out by the software rather than having to be done manually has been increasing. And ultimately, you will not do CommServer configuration by editing those files. It will be done by the workstation.
Right.
And it's a workstation issue to, it should do whatever mechanical duplication you've had to do in the past when editing SYN files yourself. In terms of trying to simplify the whole installation process, we are trying to put some documentation into the manuals and the release notices, which will help you through the whole process of CommServer system design, working out, being able to sort of encapsulate in what we call worksheets and result sheets the information that's going to go into eventually the SYN files, but via the workstation. And if we lay those things out properly, we should avoid any duplication or error-prone methods that you've had to use in the past.
Well, we sit back here and think about this. The more and more we get into this workstation's going to do it all, the more and more I'm scared, because I can't see the workstation.
It's a real bone of contention for us.
I can't see the workstation. Oh, it's all going to be done for. I know it's a great idea, and a lot of customers want, like we talked about before, this graphics interface.
When you say you can't see the workstation, you're saying you can't see the workstation improving that.
We cannot run the workstation remotely.
Right. This guy's added something to the database that should work, and I can't see it.
And quite often, as you know, customers think they did something a particular way,
and they didn't.
Right.
I swear to you they did.
Yeah, because I think an outcome of this week is we got a request for a SILT decompiler so that we can actually we can look at what the files that were generated were.
Right.
And yeah, there is one. Yeah. So this is typical of typical of the tools that we have lingering in development, which probably have a lot of usefulness to you, but they're just used for our own purpose, and we're just trying to bring those together and come up with sort of a packaging so that we have these things that can help you.
Will these tools be updated with each change that's made?
That becomes a problem of supporting these things, because one of the problems is these are just development tools that we threw together to help us develop, and we don't really have the bandwidth to support them. Where we can identify the really important ones, we probably can try to help you there. And some of the tools are relatively generic, such that they don't change. They don't need a large amount of support.
These tools available to the field for support.
It's something that
I know you all are trying to remove some of them as the need lessons.
Bottom line to me is a way to run this thing remotely without using the graphical interface. I mean, that is the bottom line from a remote support standpoint.
If we can't look, one of the things we talked to the guy yesterday where the silk file came out was you won't be able to see trouble tickets and stuff like that. You won't be able to see the things that are stored on the PC. But if we could dial in and do everything the PC can do except for stuff just on the PC. Via text or something.
Yeah, currently only trouble tickets are stored on the PC.
Right.
And you will still be able to get at those via the MV through a telnet.
Right. But that's, I guess, is what we need, bottom line, to support this thing remotely.
If we take a step back with the gist of all of your questions, and that is support of this user from Atlanta, and we look at the target that this product is going into, definitely we don't see this product being sold to mom and pop candy shops.
Right.
For many reasons. Let's look at the
300K.
Let's discuss a little bit of what is the target market for these boxes, and what kind of implementation plan you have thought of as far as local SE installing it, or someone such as Gary or Jerry coming out and doing the install, and what kind of support plan you see required for this target market that you're going after.
Pete Coburn is on site.
No, we'll be on site. I'll be on site first.
Well, first, perhaps to close down this issue of the management support, the remote support, I think we all recognize that as a significant issue, not just for us supporting systems, but for customers supporting their own systems, especially in a large environment where they have more than one node. Okay, so I think what we need to do is maybe sit down, Ken, and the rest of us, and kind of have a strategy with, essentially a schedule as to what kinds of functionality we can provide and what time frame, so you have something to expect.
Okay.
Why don't we do that?
Can we be involved in that at all somehow?
Yeah.
Have input to it, or?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Great.
Another thing, depending on that schedule, if it makes sense to do some more things with documentation, okay, of what we have today, perhaps there's an opportunity for some project-related things where some of the field people, some of you guys, could actually come in and work with development to do some of that stuff on a project basis, so that it would offload them and they continue to move forward on the development, and it would also help you guys understand more and more what the detail stuff is.
Right.
So I'll take responsibility for making those two things happen.
Great.
As far as the target market, anybody who has $500,000. There's a lot of activity, okay, going on, probably more than we expected in this short time frame. There's probably about 18 to 20 deals going right now, okay, worldwide, and it's just, we're getting calls every day with new opportunities. And most of the opportunities are coming from large corporations, people like Westinghouse and Geisco and Occidental, and people like that, and also the RBOX, Southwestern Bell, Singapore Telecom, the Dutch PTT, Ameritech and Illinois Bell are very interested in this. Telenet, okay. Some of the network service providers, everybody, we're definitely right on target with regards to what people are looking for, okay, and that is a way to provide additional services to their users or to their subscribers, okay, additional value-added messaging services. And the first one that pops into your head their head is electronic mail. And X400 and fax appear to be the two that stand out in most people's heads as where the future is going with regards to electronic mail, at least in the short term. Okay, so fax, it turns out, is I think a real added value that we have over some of the other alternatives that are out there today. And also the ability for customers to install this and manage it themselves, as opposed to buying the service from Telenet or MCI, okay, who also offer services like that. So I guess the marketplace is going to, you're going to see it in large corporations that have distributed, I mean, just essentially Fortune 1000 accounts. And it's going to be sold to the telecommunications departments. Okay, people that essentially, what we've seen is the reason why companies haven't been doing more of this. Okay, you can kludge together solutions today to do this kind of stuff. Okay, but the reason why you haven't seen more of it is because politically it's just not feasible to go in for a large organization, okay, even Data General size, to sign up all the different groups that own computer systems, okay, and own messaging and electronic mail systems, sign all those groups up independently to buy software and to integrate with each other. Okay, so what happens is you really have a need for a central switch, central node that can provide native support for all the different environments that exist in the company. Okay, and we're going to find that here with Data General when we install in IMG, okay, the communication server. You're going to see a lot of the different divisions starting to sign up and use it. Okay, so I think there is tremendous market out there for this kind of product. Okay, and we're seeing there's a lot of interest in large corporations and in the R box, and that's who we're going after initially. In the long term, as we port this to Avion, okay, and as the entire system becomes more turnkey, okay, and we have a wider range of gateway support, it's going to be more appropriate to put this down into a smaller business environment. Okay, some of the key things there is better support for LAN messaging systems, okay, supporting the MHS protocol, which is used by Novell and a number of other companies for their mail systems in the LAN environment, okay, supporting further capabilities with things like the RUA, okay, in Windows environments and things like that. So in the long term, say that's 18 months out, we're going to be able to sell this into a broader marketplace of our traditional customers, say, okay, who just want a node for $100,000 to do their messaging. Okay, but initially for the next year, the target is going to be large corporations and network service providers. Did I miss the second half of your question?
It was, the second half was a little bit like implementation. What is your perception of how much work you're going to do to install these things and to maintain them initially?
Okay. Well, this kind of all ties together. We're kind of on the front end of this, okay, and it's questionable as to what extent the customer should pay for installation and support versus what extent we should pay for the installation and support of the product until it reaches a point of maturity. Okay? At some point, it should be very easy for a customer to buy and install this. Okay? Today, it isn't because we're still moving forward in the development. Okay? Once it reaches that point of maturity, we'll essentially install this as we do anything else. I mean, the SE goes, SE or SS, does the SE still do installation of software?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that many?
Yes.
Okay. The SE installs the software, and anything after that, any kind of configuration is billable. Okay, and we're working with DGNS, and we're working with essentially the SE consulting contract people here. We want to put together some packages so that it's easy to sell a 4-week or an 8-week contract for installation and configuration and design, essentially bringing the thing up. Okay, so we'll have packages like that available to make it easier for the sales reps to sell, you know, SE consulting service, okay, for installation.
That's, I don't know if that's, I don't know how we're going to do that, because what you just said is, I guess, I'm not sure if it's, I don't want to say it's incorrect, but I'm not quite sure, because when you say, well, the SE's installed this thing now and everything after that is billable, why is it billable? They now have a Support Plus contract, they call Support Center.
That's billable.
That's billable. You ought to see the Support Plus pricing. Yeah, that's why I say there's a question as to who really should be responsible for the first 6 months or the first 9 months or until, say, summer time frame when this thing's reached a point of maturity. Okay, and we're kind of grappling with that. I don't feel that the customer should pick up the entire tab for going in and going down to the trace level to get the thing working.
Yeah.
And, typing into like, C files, directory information. Okay, but I think we're going to work on that and we'll have a solution. Initially, we're essentially saying, let's put together a package which includes SE consulting services, and we're going to work with DGNS, okay, to try to get them to provide a 4 or 8 week installation contract, which will, do things beyond just standard installation of the software, but help the customer configure it and tune it and optimize it and set it up right. So, Ken, you want to say something?
The launch of this and the support of this is continuing support and is a big concern that we don't have a full solution for. Data General doesn't know how to support products such as this and install them and be able to do it. And I think we're aware of that. And as Todd is mentioning, is that we're looking at alternate ways of bringing this product into the market, making sure that as a competitive soft switch guarantees will run. Part of their price and everything is support cost, and if it's bad, they'll put someone on a plane. And we have to be aware of this in order to compete in this market and to be able to do this. So we're going to have to do something that's a little bit different in order to go and do it. But we also have to rely on traditional mechanisms within Data General to potentially expand some of their knowledge and be able to grow with the product. Initially, the rollout is going to be very controlled. We aren't going to go and overextend ourselves. We've had 3 training courses around the world right now, and there'll be more training courses, and they'll be dedicated to areas and SCs and people responsible for the sites that are coming of these 18 or more opportunities that are beginning to be developed. For the first few months, we're going to keep the number of installations down to a reasonable level. Development will assist in a lot of these initial ones, as will Jerry and even PAE get involved, and obviously yourselves being involved in order to get you up to speed. Try to develop target teams that can go and actually work on these, especially so that knowledge can be distributed and help. This is a rather complex project, as all of you probably are aware of by now, if you weren't at the first of the week. And we are very concerned about making sure that it is successful, and we aren't going to go and lose that. Our intent is to roll it out on VS, establish ourselves in the market, launch it, create a name and a desirable MV product. We will be working with the MV product in order to make sure that it is a valid product on the MV. But we are also, as Todd mentioned, moving and migrating to Unix, targeting more lower-end users, integrating with, making sure there's close correlation with 902 and being able to do that, and the type of customers that are there with the land mail and all the various situations. So the product is going to be an evolutionary product and moving over to Unix, migrating, as well as continuing on the MV, attacking both the high end as it can now and the low end in the future. And so it's going to be something to watch. What we need from you in order to make sure we do it in the right timing and the right pacing is the feedback and the constant and as you're doing now and everything. But it's going to be an exciting time, I think, to go and witness.
Like you mentioned with the soft switch, they guarantee uptime and that. I think it's going to be a transition that hopefully we've learned from the Genios experience of the level of support that's required for this product versus an MV running get processing, because it's not an 8 to 5 system. I had the pleasure of working on a Genios beta site last year, and
you're still smiling.
Yeah. I've caught up on my sleep since then. But the people, the phone mentality was the thing is not up until you get dial tone, and I see the same kind of requirement here, is that we have to have the dedication to get out there with a 2-hour response time, which is more the telephony response time versus the 4-hour response time to get it up and going. And you don't leave until dial tone comes up, or in this case, services are back online. Because I'm interested in with Southwestern Bell, and this is a targeted services for the Bell people, and as soon as this goes offline, they are not generating revenue anymore, so it's lost revenue when this is down.
That's right.
So hopefully we can make the transition.
Todd and I are very aware of that, and I think that that's what we're looking at. We really want to do that.
Yeah.
Any suggestions you might have, let us know.
One of the things that we did with, when PCI was first brought out into the field, was I don't know if any of you were all involved in this, but some of the major installations, we requested copies of, not to the detail level, but a pretty good level of the actual installation at that major site. So when the support center got a call from these guys, we didn't have to start from ground one and build our way up to what their network looked like. I think I'd like to request that of all the SEs that are involved in some of the major installations, that when you're completed with it, send us a copy of what you've done, all your notes or whatever. So when they call us and they say, well, we're doing this, we don't have to start from dead ground zero, work our way up to where now we're cohesive and coherent with the customer and can talk to them.
I think that information would be valuable for both PAE and
Yeah.
especially the initial ones for us ourselves as well.
So it gives us an idea of what customers are also trying to do with the product from the center standpoint.
That kind of brings up an issue that I was thinking about until the parameter verifier or whatever. Might be handy to have a formal type form, okay, that shows parameters and what each customer has and what the parameters of their particular UAs are that they have.
That's what the result sheets that is the idea behind those is on a small number of pieces of paper, you have the entire configuration information for a CommServer node, that of it which is related to the CommServer software at least. So yes, we realize the importance of that, and you would perhaps in the software support center have copies of those things for each of your customers, and you could then talk to them about the various things and tell them what to check.
Do you think we can get a commitment from the SE world to do that, send us that stuff?
In effect, it's the customers who would be able to send you that information. The customer.
Fax. So hard, Alex. Fax to the city files.
Yeah.
Actually, Jeff, working out this class, I have some of those sheets that I've done myself. And in fact, when we go over to do the Eurocom rollout of the product, we're going to be using those sheets again and trying to update them. We'll try and make sure that you get copies of that.
Please do.
That's still being evolved.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Jerry's got. Sorry.
Can this information be kept on the management workstation in the sense that you could go in remotely and take a look at it? Should a customer add or change his configuration without notifying the customer support center?
Well, they're going to do that anyway.
Right, but if it was kept in a central location on the management workstation in a file, you can log into that and take a look at that information.
Yeah, unless the
Will this worksheet information be stored on the workstation? No. The purpose of the worksheets and the result sheets is to assist the installer, the system designer, to go through the mental process of deciding how many dock conversion servers should I have in my system and what shall I call them. It's to help that process of decision making that's part of designing and installing and configuring a system. The result sheets are an encapsulation on paper of those decisions that have been made. They could then be typed in and stored somewhere, but the purpose of these things is to assist the human process there. That information, when these result sheets have been produced, the installer will walk up to the workstation and type that information in. So yes, the information is in the workstation or on the system. It is the configuration information of the system. But the purpose of these sheets is to have it in a concise form that can be easily kept in the software support center, easily faxed to the SE or whatever. It's just a different, concise representation for that information.
I guess the capacity planning, just from maybe a systems engineering point of view,
assuming the product's been launched through marketing and the sales reps know how to approach a customer, just the idea of configuring a system. So whether it's a 5-node system, the most expensive or the least expensive system is going to be a major issue within systems engineering, and any sort of help that could be provided for determining the capacity.
You're asking for help deciding how much equipment to sell a customer based on how many messages he wants to send and stuff. Some work is being done on this. Todd, are you still doing that, or is it now Joe's?
Joe Handy.
Joe Handy.
Yeah, there's a guy. You want to discuss that, Ken?
We obviously, with the performance and throughput and the configurations with number of modes is even with the few sales that we've made, has always been a touchy touch and feel type of activity. And what we have done and what we're continuing to do is doing performance throughput measurements with each pass of the software, trying to establish what it is as far as memory and disk and all the various. We're working with Todd with this configuration, second pass of the maps that should come out, and that information should be available in at least another, month?
5 o'clock today.
Ah, well, there we are.
I mean, at least the first pass.
The first pass of the configurator.
I've taken a first cut at what I think the numbers are going to be in terms of memory requirements, disk, CPU, and it'll give you some feeling for system requirements and how to configure a system.
I think what I would like to see is a configuratable tool that we could go and just plug it in. That could be a simple spreadsheet or something. I'm working with some of my people to see whether that can be generated and developed. I'm not sure it can yet because of what's going there.
They
But
did that with Unix before.
It would be nice if we can go and get to that level. Hopefully we can do that before actual FCS in order to go and do that.
That would be a good tool.
In order to be able to assist. I think it's almost necessary in order to go and do that. Otherwise, you're going to have to go and know intimately all the variables in order to do that. That's my goal. Whether it's going to be done, I can't promise, but I'll make every effort.
Should I write that one down?
It'd be nice if that tool could also generate default parameters for what they think the network should look like. If you can extend it that far.
Yeah. Okay, we'll look into that. It's a different topic, different elements that you're really paying attention to, but okay.
I'll make a note. Auto configurator.
No.
And installer, Ken Kossack.
He will write.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't you love how action items are
Yeah.
set?
I do it all the time.
Right on the line.
It seems right now we're in like a beta test, from a technical point of view, more of a support issue, but the whole launching or the rollout to the field issues. We have marketing organizations within North America's sales division where there's marketing guys that are direct reports to the vice president, more or less, of each operation, where I'd sure like to see some relationship between marketing and...
I talked to Bruce Bombush half an hour a day. No. You're talking to a guy like the TSG kind of people, is that it? Or Bruce Bombush?
Yes, well, Bruce Bombush is in marketing, Western marketing. I'm from TSG in Western.
Okay.
How are we going to do the rollout? How are we going to let the salespeople or anybody, in operations know how we're going to sell this, as a beta size, or how many beta size we can handle in Western operation or
Okay.
Northern operation?
Well, right now, I think as far as beta sites go, we've got all the beta sites we can handle. FCS is what, 90 days, Ken, from here?
Plus or minus.
What?
No, the first products will start rolling out in March.
March, okay. I think what Steve Cruey is also in marketing, working. The two of us are working together on this. He's put together a video, a slideshow. There's a number of brochures that are available as well that'll be coming out ASAP. Okay, this stuff's already complete. It's just a matter of reproducing it and shipping it. I think the sales survival kit, as they call it, should be on its way to the field right now. In addition to that, okay, what's worked in the past, for me anyway, has been going out to the field and talking to each one of the regions, and actually just talking to the sales reps and systems engineers, and just giving them firsthand, giving them a pitch.
How are we going to do a demo? I mean, in each region or sales office, I don't think anybody, in a sales office right now, branch sales office, can put out a whole demo
Yeah.
of this thing here. But if you want to fly every customer, potential customer, to Westboro, to the EBC, and say, hey, we have the greatest thing here in the EBC.
Yeah.
You want to spend, $2,000 fly there, and for beta or sell it.
Yeah, videotape of the demo.
That's a good point. There's two things. One is the videotape of the demo, okay, which is going to be available to give the customer some idea of what this thing looks like and how it works. The other thing is going to be, and that's a good point, is getting some systems in the field, getting this capability in the field. Ken, you want to talk about that?
Another thing that we're trying to work on, and it's just a matter of, again, establishing which machine, whether it's with marketing resource or one of the demonstration machines on the EBC, is a ability to do some remote demoing capabilities, to be able to potentially log in with your RUA and be able to send faxes to and from, on a just as you log in in order to get access to the IBM system here, in order to do some demoing of DXA. That gives you, it doesn't give you the direct kind of demo, but it does give you an ability to send faxes and telex back to yourself. And if you do have an IBM system, you could even log in remotely, just as you do now with your DXA demos, in order to demonstrate that. So we're looking at that as an option too, that might help us not actually have a system in every area, because I don't think many areas can afford it. Hopefully that will sort itself out next. As far as the launch and beta and some of the initial installations, we have weekly meetings here reviewing all the various opportunities, and you should be coming through Todd and Steve Curry to identify the opportunities and to get them registered as far as how serious and important, as far as time frames, size, and everything. Then we can bring that in, incorporate it into this I guess I can call it a launch committee. No, this isn't California. And basically time it, and it really comes down to timing where our resources are somewhat, spread thin, in order to identify which ones we can do when and support.
I guess my concern is because all the NASD sales reps are going to see this as a CEO to telex or a CEO interface, and it's not.
So that's what we're going to try to do with each of these courses, and as we identify and make contacts, was we just start to get people such as yourselves and to spread the knowledge that way, as well as with the videotape and any type of personal contact we can go and do. Some of the survival kit, the compete article, and things like that, hopefully will help. That's been my concern for the last 2 years, is that this is not a typical Data General product that is there, and it's still going to take some doing.
So we have enough beta tests started right now, right? How many do we have in North America?
How many are we committed to, roughly? I mean, there's essentially Singapore Telecom. Okay.
Yeah, we have Singapore, we have Dutch, and it's a toss-up as to whether the Illinois Bell or the Southwest Bell will be the first one. There's also the Federal Reserve that may kick in, although I think that's a lower priority now. We're also working with a couple other. There is no active one in the States right now, but we're trying to keep it down, at least in the initial 3 or 4, down to 1 a month, to be perfectly honest, until we get closer to FCS, and just as more and more people get trained, because it does take development manpower as well as the more PAE, CSS manpower to actually support these.
Can we be considered to get on that list in the center?
Well, we do have alpha capability with the IMG machine that is there, and it's coming in there. Yes, just bring it in, and we'll put that on the list as far as being able to do that.
Is it possible we can give a list of all the beta tests we have? Say from Bell and who do we have? When we sign up, after we sign up.
Essentially, I mean, when I say we have sites, I'm really saying we have. I mean, to me, a beta test site is simply a commitment of development resources. Okay, and I mean that's kind of what it means in terms of resources. And I think we've made all I'm saying is that there's enough business out there that's already identified that
doesn't
I
mean you
don't
should go out and look for business.
I mean, in terms of beta sites, okay, we've got Singapore, Dutch. There's going to be 4, maybe 5, including IMG sites, and we'll have to be very sensitive about, doing additional installations of pre-release software. That doesn't mean that if a customer purchases a system that ships in March at FCS, we won't have development people available to support the installation. But it does mean that we have to seriously limit any further expectations that we're going to ship equipment before FCS to customers. Does that answer the question? Sure.
I'm wondering how the priorities were really decided. I mean, things like which agent access units were picked. I mean, simple mail transfer seems to, I mean, if you don't have simple mail transfer, you're really not talking to networks. And Twix in the U.S., as opposed to Telex, seems to be a major difference. And just wondering how much pressure or how you feel about getting those in.
We get pressure all the time, obviously.
Well, when this program first started, I don't like to think how long ago it was, but however many marketing people we've gone through in order to go and actually get the, Todd's been with us now. No, it's in defining which ones, we only have a few, as everybody knows, the resources to do a certain set. And what we did was basically identify it's a worldwide product. Telex is much more important worldwide in order to actually identify that and be able to function as that. So we basically said we needed an IBM story. It would have been nice to have both profs and DISOS, but development-wise we didn't have the resources to do both, so we decided on DISOS. Mainly because of the fact that IBM was is in a transition with profs and some of their interconnect story, although we do have a potential of getting profs in depending on customer interest and whatnot, not for first release, but after that. And obviously CEO was we couldn't do it without it, even though, a lot of our customers now, the PTTs, what's CEO? But other customers, it's going to vary as far as CEO. But fax was a given as far as the market going and saying. I think there's no disagreement on that. The ones that were there and we wish we could have done in the first place was Wang, obviously, DEC, Simple Mail. The reason for Simple Mail not being there, other than resources, is the fact that yes, we need it there. We know that it's there. In particular, we need it there for when we move to Unix, obviously, even more so. And that's really the process that we went through. We had a capability of doing about 5 or in that number, and we had to process elimination, which were the critical ones to actually do it. We couldn't go out without an IBM story, Telex was so important as far as internationally, and especially the initial marketplace we're going for, as far as the large corporations and the international corporation, the PTT, that kind of they fell out that way.
One thing that we're looking into is, since we have MailEye and we have PXA, okay, and we have the Wang Doc Exchange, okay, the question comes up, is there some way to provide an interim solution using CEO as a filter, okay, between CommServer and these other gateways, okay, and I mean,
marketing
we're not going to do.
Obviously, I mean, when you get out in the field and in particular opportunities, there are ways of getting other functions potentially in a bootstrap type of mechanism that we as development wouldn't do it as a standard product, but it would have to be an SC or a systems division or some type of activity. You do have some interconnect story with CEO document exchange and things like that, and that might be some alternative. But that's a separate issue and separate effort. Don't sell it.
Well, I think it's important. I mean, there's lots of every customer that you run up against is going to have Wang and DEC. I mean, everybody's going to have wang and deck, and they're going to ask what we're doing about that. And we have a schedule, and we have a plan to provide that. Okay, if they need something in the short term, though, I think it's appropriate to get SPSD involved to spec the deal and to identify what level of functionality we can provide in the interim.
Do you have a like a flat IPC kind of interface that sits out there in your debugging areas that could get you into the AU, like where you could from CLI execute some command that would stuff a file into the CEO AU for shipping to some other AU for testing purposes, instead of having to go into CEO and request a mail? Anybody know that? Does that make any sense?
CommServer integrated toolkit.
Is that what you're asking about? There are...
Well, what I was getting at on what you're saying, like with MailI, you know, you can fudge MailI to say, or set up a batch job on AOSVS to take SMTP messages that come into the MQ directory, spool them up, stuff them in, shove them into CEO AU, and tell them where you want to go. You know, if you have something like that.
We don't have anything like that.
Okay. Well,
as Todd said, various gateways have been identified as important, and,
yeah.
And we have plans.
I was just wondering if you had that kind of openness right now in there.
We have various
Easy
things
enough
for
to
stuffing messages in that we use for testing,
Yeah.
but we wouldn't want to build products with them.
Development is very pure, as you can see. I'm less pure. You know, I was an SC for 3.5 years in Chicago. I worked with Bill and a few, Peter and some of the guys, and there's lots. I know there's lots of kludging that goes on, essentially to get the job done, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because I think it's going to come up. I think customers are going to want some kind of solution, and we're going to say, yeah, we have the pure solution coming, and in the interim, we can give you the the kludgy, dirty solution, which really is going to work pretty good anyway. So I just want you to be aware that there are ways to do it, not with development, okay, because they're working on pure things, but SPSD, DGNS, and just CLI, CLI macro. Just to say that. Okay, next question.
I think he wants to rebut what you just said.
Not at all. Not at all. I think you should also bear in mind that a lot of the investment that's gone into the development of CommServer has been put into the platform,
right,
into making it easy for ourselves and for others to add whatever new external connections are needed, to add whatever distributed applications the customer is interested in that we did not foresee and produce ourselves. That has been a long process of planning that to make it easy for systems division, for ourselves, for customers that want to do it themselves. So we probably don't have to resort to kludges in many cases. We shouldn't have to. It was planned so that we wouldn't need to.
That's an interesting point. Is the interface going to be documentation to the interface, the UMB?
The FCS, first FCS, there will not be documentation for customers to directly use the platform to build their own gateways. But already we're offering services of...
We don't have the time or the resources to actually publish it and test it and whatnot, but on a case-by-case basis, either through DGNS or whatever that we can work out in the time. If a customer is there and he wants to implement a simple mail, or if you want to implement simple mail and have that, and that's a better way of doing it, then I think we can work with you in order to figure out the best way of accomplishing this. We want to make sales. And just to support Todd is that we want to go and close deals and make sales, and we aren't going to go and turn down something, but we're going to go and make sure that it's done the appropriate way.
Okay, that leads us to a support issue, Chuck. Are we going to actually, from the support center standpoint, support customers write their own applications?
From the support
Probably, no, probably that would be a DGNS activity. That would be the initial, and we have different ways of doing it, whether it's DGNS and/or coming in. Depends on the size of the deal. It's going to be a case-by-case type of
Beyond that
operation.
needs to be stated in the maps article that we are not responsible for support for that interface.
Yeah, that
It only
interface
exists right now with SNA.
Yeah, it doesn't really exist with SNA.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Philadelphia lawyer.
Yeah. You know, that's always been a bone of contention in the support center. How far do we support customers writing applications?
No, that's true, and it will.
So you need to make a decision.
Okay.
Good action item, Todd.
I'm trying to do them both,
Thank you.
know?
Okay. Appreciate it. We're going to start running out of time. Any other?
What's a PC?
I don't have to.
Oh, I think, I don't know, I think he addressed that, or again, we addressed what valid PCs are we going to support. We're going to say the PCs for the PCI are the only ones we support, or we're going to say any look-alike.
We're going to say, just as with PCI, and then it's going to be on a case-by-case, depending on customers, be able to go and identify the proper ways in order to go and do that. We can't control it. You know, for example, Singapore. Singapore is going to be reselling the functions, and basically it's going to go and be there. And that's going to be our first case in which we're going to have a lot of lookalikes or even partial lookalikes in Singapore in order to actually do that. And I think we're going to learn a lot in order to go and see which PCs will support and what the issues are. You know, as far as on the surface, you know, in front of everybody, just, you know, nothing more than what Data General already supports.
One of the things I just thought of, you said, or one of your slides mentioned that we're going to be using Hayes modems.
Yeah.
Why the push towards the Hayes modem versus, what's the other one that we have now in the center? That
It's
we,
still a Hayes compatible.
is it?
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's the, what's the black, what's the modem called?
Micom.
Or?
It's a Data General modem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why the push towards the Hayes versus that?
It says Hayes compatible.
It's Hayes compatible. It's industry standard and be able to.
Yeah. Microcom is Hayes compatible.
Okay. Well, he has to set up. Yeah.
Microcoms are the DG. Why? Just limit that section in the.
We had a difficult time configuring them in the center. Yeah. For dial-in, dial-out purposes.
I'd like to say something about,
That's because he's using them in a
about
legal
Canada.
configuration.
Yes.
Yes, we have an opportunity okay, in Canada, CNCP communications. They, you know, I like to find out, you know, how we will pursue this sales opportunity. They have their own electronic mail, they have their own carrier service, they have the prof service, they have SNA, ISO services. But the problem that they are facing right now is how to map those ISO users' name and domains into other services. So we've been pursuing for this, we've been in communication with CNCP for over a year, how to, you know, resolve this particular problem. We thought the CommServer obviously would be the solution for that. So right now, okay, we are trying to close the deal and trying to, you know, get more information for them. And I like to find out, you know, what sort of capability can we help them to resolve this problem using the CommServer solution. It seems we are not there yet, and they may have to do some customizing themselves to making use of our CommServer backbone to resolve their issues.
Yeah, if the released products that we have do not completely go and cover, that's when we start getting into the customization. The first line of attack on that, obviously, is to bring DGNS involved and to be able to do that. I think the evaluation process and everything has to include them in order to go and do that. That level of commitment is there. I have been aware of the CNCP opportunity, and I've been keeping track of it. It isn't as complete as some of the others that are in the U.S. side of the world, but it does sound like a very interesting opportunity that probably should pay attention to.
That's why some recommendation from the marketing. How
As
you
far as
pursue
pursuing it is to continue to come in through marketing. Marketing will direct into DG&S and bring in development as appropriate in order to identify the opportunity and to get into the technology, as well as the PAE and the support. So just follow the normal procedures as far as that, although we'll bring in DG&S much sooner as far as that opportunity.
Let's talk about that afterwards.
On a practical problem, documentation, we have both release notices and pass notices. Point. And I think I kind of felt, I think some others felt that one or the other is better. I noticed from my experience at Data Jones, which is limited, usually the product guide, and then there's release notices that are embedded to that. I'm wondering how you're going to structure the documentation when the product ships.
We have, how many manuals do we have on the process? 5 different manuals? Do you have a...
You know all that?
Well,
you guys should sit next to each other.
Are you Mr. Manual?
No, I'm not Mr. Manual. You were asking about release notice and pass notices. The pass notices is the release notice. The release notice is what will be present on when the product ships. The information that's in the pass notice will either migrate to the release notice or disappear because it's no longer applicable as the product finalizes. The documentation set that we have consists of an overall planning and managing your CommServer system manual, plus an individual manual for each of the gateway types, which gives you the specific information for that gateway. That's the central node software. There's also a separate manual for the RUA user. So that's the end user documentation. Does that answer the question?
One of the things we found real helpful is in that documentation, if you could provide a sample system setup somewhere. To just take one host, a couple of fax and telex or whatever, an example, and stuff it in there. Yeah, configuration that we can say, well, while we're reading this thing, yeah, we can equate it to this picture and see what they're doing, if that's possible.
Okay, well, it's good.
Pass the request on to documentation. Seems like a good idea, yeah.
One other item was the performance of the management workstation. It seems very slow. Agonizingly slow. I'm wondering if it's...
Yeah, the performance of the management workstation is there's 2 factors involved. One is just the amount of software we're putting onto the management workstation. The combination of 386iX and X Windows takes a lot of the memory, and we've already done a lot of work there trying to optimize the performance. It's at the point now where it's marginal. We're still doing work to make it go faster. The other area is the interactions with the system, and some of that is, again, we're doing work there. Some of that is even in network. In fact, one of the problems that we're currently seeing in our own lab is that we're being impacted by other things on the network. And again, this is more work we have to do in doing the tuning. We're hoping to make it better. We understand that it's sort of at the marginal level.
Is it possible to use Mavericks instead of 386?
Yes, it is. In fact, that's something we're looking at. It's a relatively simple process in that it's based on a standard System 5 platform 5.3 platform to move it over to the Maverick.
Can we sell it that way?
Not at the moment. There is one minor difference, is that currently DGX doesn't support the transport library interface that we're using on the under 386iX.
Can we run it in a VP, or no, that's the other thing I was thinking of, fax environment. Can we run that in a VPIX? Where you can have the management workstation running under VPIX and use a fax card or whatever?
I don't know enough about that sort of configuration to say, but theoretically the management workstation will run on any System 5.3 platform, providing it's got all the facilities. from what we've seen using a Maverick, performance is probably going to be similar. The 386 appears to be about the same as the 16 megahertz Maverick.
Another note on management workstations, user interface. The X Windows, the windowing system is really nice to have. There are a lot of things with it that don't match the interface, for instance, that's standard in the industry, like you can't double click, or if you click on one thing and then you click on another, the first thing you clicked on does not get unset.
Okay.
Are those going to be addressed?
Yes, we are. User interfaces are a very religious issue. We have various sets of people who want certain things, other things. In terms of the double click, yeah, we are. We're going to do something about that. That is probably our number one RFE, is to be able to double click on things. Again, the selection, we actually went out of our way to do the second thing of being able to have multiple things selected. It turns out it's the way we've done things that it's been sort of more or less obsolete, and we're probably going to back that out. But it is very difficult to get a user interface that satisfies everyone. You have people who are Macintosh users, you have people who are terminal users, and you have people who are used to MS Windows, and it's very difficult to make everyone happy. And plus, within the company, we now have a set of user interface guide. There's a committee that are looking at user interfaces in graphics for various terminals. And unfortunately, we've sort of predated the work they've done, so we're even against what are coming out as the company standards.
Are there any plans to move to a motif interface?
Not for the current flavor of CommServer management.
Like right now, on CEO Object Office, it's almost exactly look like view waves, the interface. Why can't we just use that one instead of the one we use?
Because we went the path we went. Unfortunately, we can't turn back and change our user interface at this point. We started this activity off almost a year ago, and at that point, there were pockets of activity in terms of graphic interfaces within the company, and nobody went in the same direction. And we stand today where there's an effort to bring it all together, but we're just one of these islands.
Yeah, we'll be continuing to look at this, especially as we move to Unix, and be able to do that and assess the cost as well as the value of making sure that it's a common interface as we integrate it with 902 and all the various efforts. But the timing and such, and to get to market, just prevented us from actually blending in with any of the others that were not at the right position in order to utilize.
Now, one other thing, management workstation. When we release the product, we have all the management, functionality working and everything. We have to have a workstation to come with the system, right? That's one of the requirements. You cannot run without that workstation. Because on the Kurland article, the first one, it didn't mention anything about management workstation. It says running on every class machine, okay, one or multiple. It didn't say anything about you have to have a workstation come with to.
Wait, did you get the hard copy of them?
Good. Burn it.
Well, I got it last week before I come over here. I looked at it and didn't say anything.
I think on the last page of the diagram that shows an example of configuration, doesn't it have hard copy? Yeah. I've got about 13 pages of configuration information that's going to go into detail in terms of actual model numbers to configure each of those devices, and it's just about done now. And I'll get the mail list at the end of the class and send it to each of you.
Todd didn't have very much time when the first time.
We wanted to make a generic maps in order to do it, and we'll be coming out with updates and enhancements on this.
It does say in the maps, though, it does give my CEO address for configuration.
I was impressed by Todd's willingness.
Yeah.
All the
box is full, though.
Yeah, right.
All the components are in the formal maps on the last page.
Yeah,
But first sentence, the first paragraph.
Picture's worth 1,000 words.
Right. Thanks, Bill.
With your maps, Todd, how much competitive information have you gone into? I'm sorry, I haven't read the maps
Yeah,
that
there
have
is
come
no
out yet.
the competitive information. There's a compete piece that's, I think it's done, it's in review, done by Compete on CommServer, okay, that market. And I reviewed it, it looks good, and Catherine Weldon, who did the piece, is going to be sending it out in the next Compete issue, I think. So there'll be some good information there. If you need it right away, I'm sure she can send you the CEO version. So just send me a note.
I'd like to kind of turn it around a little bit and have us ask you a question now you've had a week with it, unless there's some other questions here. Yes, I'm sorry.
I have one question on the X Windows, the interactive is currently shipping Rev 2, and we use Rev 1.06. Is that correct?
The versions you're using at the moment have X 1.06 X Windows directly from Interactive. DG is releasing 2.01 of Interactive's X Windows as a standard product, and I believe that was released a couple of weeks back, and shipments have just started.
Another Rev issue is that we're trying to work this, and I hope if you can give me some sign as to whether I should just kick and scream or whether I can let it go, is that we may be tied to AOSVS Rev 2, AOSVS 2 Rev 2, which is shipping a little bit later because of some interdependencies that AOSVS is forcing upon us. Is that going to be a major concern?
You may be cutting yourself short on some of the 765 customers. I know that's, you hadn't planned on putting this in 765 anyway, but we may lose out on some big sites that want to stay there, especially since we've announced that we're going to stick around and support those revs.
One point on that, a lot of the large customers like NASA, people like that, okay, Occidental, Citgo, these large accounts, essentially what they're looking at, a lot of them have low-end MVs that they can free up, okay, as a starter system for their CommServer network. And we're seeing a lot of interest in running the software on existing equipment where they can actually dedicate an entire system that they no longer have requirement for that capacity. They've upgraded to MV40s or MV 20 mod 2s or something, and they have a MV15 mod 8 available. So that addresses part of that issue, but it doesn't address the issue of, see, there won't be many customers that will run CommServer on the same system as another application. Okay?
I know we can.
Yeah, very few. So that won't be as big a problem.
I wanted to go and see what your initial reaction was first. I think you pointed out some concerns as far as support, launching, management on the area. A gateway of simple mail. We could go through missing functions that you see that you think are important based on your knowledge of your customers. What's your feeling here?
I feel that it sure would be nice if we had like a scaled down product of something we could put on CEO to interface to telex and fax for the in-house customer, like the telex gateway or...
Well, we already have a DG.
CEO Document Exchange 2 for telex.
For telex. For fax, I mean, I just feel like it's going to be a misunderstanding in the sales organization, and they're going to want that fax interface, and they'll sell it anyway.
We're working on, there's a product that...
For consideration for development of another document exchange just with fax, but that wouldn't be a CommServer product.
That would be great.
Yeah, there's interest for that right now.
I mean, I could see in our office, putting just KG and the fax they use.
So we can ship stuff back and forth, yeah.
I mean...
I was thinking of the number of CEO customers that would buy that. It's a big number.
There's a lot of people using fax machine right now. I mean, they don't necessarily use that. Well, in telex, in the United States, that's not that many customers. if you have to put everything on a system, like export 100, Alex, and fact all together, the customer maybe doesn't want it because don't cost them a big machine over there. Just doing nothing just for that. If you can just
Well, you don't need all of it. You could delete all of the stuff you don't want.
Well, but why they want to pay for it?
Well, that would be a packaging. I think Todd and I take a look at some other packaging options, just to go and get a solution, rather than having a minimum set of 3 or something like that. Maybe.
Even right now, well, currently we're selling to a Fortune 1000 company, but that's fine. They don't care to spend $500,000 or even $1 million. But to a smaller company, they will wonder why I have to pay for all those services I don't need.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you can take it out and say, well, we don't have that, but still, we're selling it for $500,000.
Any site that has just one MB
may just want one AU.
For CEO Doc Exchange 7, which would be a fax interface.
Yeah, I know
You have to have a multiple MB site running CEO to justify CommServer for just a fax interface. Many sites.
Well, this is, there are a lot of pieces to this, and I think one of the reasons for some of the packaging issues and decisions was obviously just to keep it simple, especially initially, for you to be able to do it. But we may not, maybe we should consider a couple more packages that are still simple, but that have some flexibility there. We didn't want to, one idea was just to mix and match. You have to figure it out yourself as far as what you have to order it, and that has never worked. Look at PCI or some of the others. So we didn't want to do that. We wanted to be able to have you order one model number and be able to pick up everything.
Since the Gamma Technology Board does inbound fax, it would be nice if we had an interface to it.
That's one of the enhancements that we're considering for a later revision. One of the issues on the inbound fax is really what are you going to do with it once it comes in? And so that's one reason why it wasn't in there in the first place, is that in reality there's not much you can do with it, and also the bandwidth of any lines as you do a store and forward. It just will, it's a fairly large document. But obviously, and if we talk to a customer and really talk through these issues of what are you going to do with it and what are you going to do, they suddenly, it dawns on them that really it's a nice thing to go and say you need, but practicality.
It's not there.
Sure.
When you started talking about packaging, it just reminded me of something. I was wondering if there was some way we could package it where you ordered one model number and if there's some way to get everything rather than having to go through all the prereqs and everything. That's a big problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've been discussing different ways we'd like to package.
Well, no, when I say everything, I mean PS2, right, model number, SQL, CEO.
Oh, okay. Like you order CommServer and it comes.
Yeah, well, we're also looking at a hardware-software configuration as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get CommServer down to a pretty reasonable price on a low-end system. On MV7800X XP, you can get a CommServer solution that's...
Please.
You better run.
What's the low-level MV you're going to set this thing out to? You're going to say it goes on a 2000?
MV7800
XP. How many megs?
28 or 24. What is it, home? 28?
28 is max.
Yeah, 28.
It may run.
Well, remember, we're still doing performance enhancements. That
I mean, some of the things, from our experience, some of the things we ran into was like cagey hung the system.
Yeah.
Which is bugs, but
yeah. I think in 4 months, when this thing starts shipping, I think you're going to see a much more, mature product that is going to come up and run very efficiently in these environments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, Todd? Roger.
You betcha.
I really think the MV7800X, I mean, it's a starter system, but it's, I think you'll find it, I think customers will find it, even when they install this thing and provide people the capability to do external mail, external messaging from their workstation, it's going to be a long, slow ramp up, okay, because people just aren't used to that. I know within DG, within our own comms marketing group, we have the ability to send faxes from CEO using DGX 400. We send it out, thanks to Alex Cullen, he's not here anymore. But he allows us to send faxes from CEO goes out through DGX 400 to Telenet, and Telenet has a bunch of Gamma Link boxes that send the fax. And this is fantastic. You can just sit at your CEO and just type a message and send it off to a guy on a fax machine. Okay, and I've been promoting that in the comms marketing group, and there's like 3 of us that are using it. Me, a guy in SBU, and 1 guy in legal. And people just, I mean, it takes a long time before people ramp up and actually start using these services, even when they're available. So I think bringing a customer online with a starter system, you're not going to see him running out of speed in 3 months. Okay, you're going to see him running out of speed in 9 months or 12 months, and then he'll be at the point where he's ready to upgrade. Another point that's more on the sales side is leasing. Okay, just to be aware that leasing is a very powerful way to sell this kind of equipment. Okay, for 2 reasons. One, a lease puts things in the perspective of a monthly payment. Okay, where it's easier to justify the cost per messaging, okay, than it does when you're selling a system for $250,000 up front. The other thing about a lease is, with Data General leasing, 18 months down the road, they can upgrade, okay, and they can essentially turn their lease over. Data General will buy back their old MV equipment and provide them with new equipment, which may be Avion or may be MV, okay, no software upgrade charge, and they can essentially roll over into new equipment 18 months down the road, which gives them better price performance essentially without any significant increase in their monthly payment. Okay, I'm giving you the George Doble leasing pitch, but in this scenario it works very well. Okay, so you can roll a customer into a low-end MV today, and 18 months down the road they can move to a new system without any increase in their monthly payment, and the sales guy gets full credit for both deals, and the branch gets full credit, which means you guys get bonuses, and
You guys are more than welcome to send those to us when we support your customers.
That's right.
Because we don't get bonuses.
So I just want you to be aware of the leasing and to bring that up when there's an opportunity. Ken, you want to keep?
On kind of a different tack, tell me to shut up if I'm trailing here. But,
Shut up, Rob.
one of the things that we did run into that someone should be aware of, and I don't know who quite to make aware of this, is in using the NetBIOS interface to communicate between the different AUs and chips and all of this. We ran into one situation where the IP routing tables in XTS got hosed, and in order to clear that out, of course, we had to bring down XTS and bring that back up, which meant that CommServer died horribly. Everything died horribly.
It's a typical situation we run into with PCI.
But PCI
It's more of a
does this a lot.
PCI issue.
Yeah, and it's something, since you guys are so dependent on that, you'll want to be working with that group to make sure that the product is really stable.
I don't know why we died with XTS going down, so that sounds like a bug to me. But as far as that, yes, we are working with them and continuing to ensure that that and DCS and all the PCI products can be stable. Don't hesitate to submit those bug reports, please, Jerry. How about if you were to look at this with your customers that you know, what priorities would you put on additional gateways? If we were to look on the ones that we have, that we've mentioned here, which ones would you consider them, what order would you have them in?
Probably the Unix anyway.
Unix, okay. Is that a particular customer base? What are you thinking of?
You got better address that.
Yeah, I think the government, any sort of government agencies or university.
We're looking at that DIS-2 bid for the government right now to sell all those Avions and Top Guns. This would be a great thing for that group to buy when you come out with it on the Avion. So
definitely when it's on Avion. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So it had to be in that initial set.
We're hoping that you put the actual user ability for a user to write one as the last priority.
Line here now, and where would that be?
It'd be nice, you know, but I don't think it's a deal breaker.
And what, Wang deck, in that order? Deck
The
Wang?
X400 is getting real
Popular in that arena.
That gives you the option to get both of those.
Customer that is looking at their own homegrown email system running on IBM. And we're proposing, and we have a large install of MBs and then also the State Farm Insurance. And we would like 25 MBs in the company, and we're in the health side of the business, whereas the auto side of the business, which is 85% of their business, is all IBM. And this is where their homegrown packages, we would like to be able to do email for that side of it. So it'd be a home written AU, right, which would be NMS or SPST, from what I hear from you.
Okay. Any, in using it, did any applications come to mind to build on top of this system as opposed to just using it for mail? Obviously, there's some EDI along the X400 lines and things like that we're considering, but any other?
See the video text and also the EDI kind of interface.
Video text. But the additional interfaces on that, that's Jared?
Internally, within the CAE group, we're actually looking at putting a where to the system, which is the field or getting information out and runs the software out in the field.
Right. Any other customer problem applications or solutions that are needed that we can look at building things on top of this?
Because that's really what it is Pat indicated. I mean, this is a platform that we want to, everything is such that we can build on top and that provide other applications or additional applications.
I mean, just the idea of doing purchase orders or invoices and stuff automatic on an application, you know, is, you know, could really be a major.
What we're looking at
are some particular VARs, communication-oriented VARs or something like that, that would be interested in working with us on these type of applications, or any type of company that might be interested in doing that, and basically working with them in a relationship to actually come out with additional functions for some of these opportunities, whether it's banking or whether it's just order entry or something like that. Are you aware of any opportunities within your areas that might be something that we want to pursue?
Mailing lists for sales reps, you know. Take that zip code or something like that, get all the Twixes on a zip and Twix out.
Yeah. Just one small detail I noticed was in the document conversion types. The document converter, there's no mechanism for converting Unix, TOP, or ML sources to any types. Maybe that will come with
version to get into the various document formatting.
What about interfacing to AOS or RDOS? Because I know it's pretty big. Is RDOS very big still over in Europe?
RDOS is big in the
Not for
States.
email, though.
You know, or
It isn't yet.
So they're usually
systems that are sitting around there doing
You don't see
applications.
OA functions on RDOS and next to none on AOS anymore.
I guess one application that always comes to mind is a gateway between a company with an internet network and an X400 interface. I mean, it seems Telenet doesn't provide that, or Telemet, you know. And this product could fit in real well as a gateway between the internet and the X400, or the internet and the DISOS networks. I mean, if there's opportunities there that we could really jump on, but there you need the internet.
What do you mean built by internet?
The simple mail transfer, but going over a wide area network as opposed to local area network.
One thing I'll mention just from my own experience is a company called iNet America, which runs something called ABA-NET. Essentially, this suggests the way this is, it's the American Bar Association's network bulletin board, information database, and everything else. And I imagine an INET, which is the company that is the parent of AVANet, sees a big market for association-type services, which are based on electronic mail and some database, menu, bulletin board types. I know that they're interested in working with us because they want us to develop a CEO-like interface like AVANet for all the CEO customers.
Bulletin board or
A conferencing capability would be of interest, I think. That's it. Okay. Any other questions that you might have? Well, I'd certainly like to thank you for spending the time this week learning all this, and I think we've appreciated your input here, and any of the STRs that Jerry's going to submit or you're going to submit will be helpful in order to actually go and do this. I think you're the first force here that's going to be out there trying to do your best to make this a success, and I'd like you to know that we're behind you. Stress behind, but we're there.
Like in front of us.
But we're very serious about this. We spent a lot of time and effort making this where it is now, and hopefully we'll continue to work on it and make it a successful product. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I have copies of the speakers' slides this morning, if you want to come by and get them.
Okay. But a CHIPS management manual.